Hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 6 of SCAUK UK live here on the Sudden Cardiac Arrest UK YouTube channel. My name's Gareth Cole. I'm one of the trustees of Sudden Cardiac Arrest UK. I am a cardiac arrest survivor, and I will be your host for this evening. If you're watching on YouTube, do please feel free to interact. This is live. You can give us a thumbs up, say hello, ask questions if you want to ask questions, and all that sort of thing. Just before we start, we are aware that we had some audio issues on the last stream. Apologies for that. We hope it won't happen again tonight. We think we know what it was. We think we sorted it out. But if it does happen and you do miss anything that's said, then again, in chat, just let us know that you've missed something, and we'll quite happily repeat it. So tonight's episode is called Managing Fatigue. It's going to be quite an interesting one. Fatigue is something that all of us suffer from as survivors and the co-survivors. So we're going to be discussing that this evening. And I say we because, again, I'm not doing this all on my own. Waiting in the wings, as always, is my good friend and fellow trustee and my partner in crime for all things SCAUK Live related, the still fabulous Joanna Balgarnie.
Hello, Gareth, and everyone else.
How are you this evening?
Yeah, very excited because this is a subject that I think affects probably almost every single one of us, as you say, survivor and co-survivor.
Absolutely. So yeah, managing fatigue. So we need an expert on managing fatigue. I mean, Joanna and you and I both live with it, but I don't think we can claim to be experts on the subject. But we do have an expert, and we have a lovely lady waiting to join us who has the honour of having the most tongue twister title of any guest we've ever had on SCAUK Live. I'm going to give it a go, and I'm going to give it a go once, because she is a cardiology clinical specialist occupational therapist. And if I got that wrong, I'm not saying it again. So please welcome Claudine Keelan.
Oh, good evening. Yeah, it is a bit of a mouthful, isn't it?
Did I get it right?
You did.
Okay, fantastic. So let's do some quick introductions, as always, on SCAUK Live. We don't assume people know who we are. I am, as I said, Gareth Cole. I'm one of the founder members of SCAUK. I'm one of the trustees, a survivor from 12 years ago of a cardiac arrest. And this whole SCAUK Live thing was kind of my idea, although Joanna was very much involved with me even before we started. So that's me. And Joanna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, indeed. So I am also a cardiac arrest survivor and also a trustee. I'm a survivor of 11 years. Shall I just explain where some of the questions came from, Gareth? Would that
please do? Yeah, please do.
So earlier in the year, those of you who are in the Facebook group will know that I asked a series of big questions, and also asked people about some of the challenges they'd had following their sudden cardiac arrest. And I must say, fatigue came out as one of the highest issues that affected, as I say, almost everybody. So much looking forward to hearing what Claudine has to share with us.
Absolutely. And Claudine, first of all, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for giving up your time this evening to come and join us. And thank you for battling through the traffic. I know you got stuck in traffic on the way home. So thanks for being here. And would you like to just introduce yourself and let people know who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Claudine Keelan. I won't go through that ridiculous title again, but basically I'm an occupational therapist with a particular interest in sudden cardiac arrest survivors and co-survivors. I work at the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. And up until recently, we've had a follow-up clinic. So I see patients when they're on the ward, and I've also seen them post as well. So I have seen the whole journey. And yeah, it's quite a passion of mine, because I think we're an unrepresented cohort of patients. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And yeah, the passion is important in all of these things. Passionate people that actually make things happen. So we'll crack on very shortly. If you guys are watching on YouTube and you want to ask a question of either myself or Joanna, but more likely to be of Claudine, do tag us in YouTube chat, and we'll try to answer your questions. By tag us, I mean start your question with @SCAUK, and then we know it's a question for us. So start your question with @SCAUK, leave a space, then ask your question, and we will do our best to answer. It doesn't have to be a question, it can be a comment, it can be a agree or disagree or whatever, but do feel free to do that. So if we're ready, which I think we are, I think Claudine's got a cup of coffee. It might be disguised as an Irish coffee, but it's a cup of coffee, let's call it. And we'll crack on with question one. Now, as Joanna said, these are questions that came in to us directly from our Facebook community. So these are questions that have genuinely been asked by members of the community that have been struggling with fatigue or want to know how to deal with it. I haven't said who's asked the question. I think if you ask the question, you will know. I didn't think it was fair to put names on, but we'll crack on with question one. And question one is quite a generic one, actually. Are high levels of fatigue typical for SCA survivors, cardiac arrest survivors, and how long can they last? So, Claudine, could I come to you and you crack into that one?
Yeah. So I think in a nutshell, yes, fatigue is very common in sudden cardiac arrest survivors. And for many people, it can certainly last a lot longer than they think it's going to, if not for a long, long period of time. I just want to say I'm obviously not medical. I'm an occupational therapist, so I can't answer any medical questions. But I have been doing a bit of research with 3 other big cardiac centres, and 6 to 12 months after their cardiac arrest, the 75%, so the biggest side effect from the cardiac arrest was actually fatigue. And that was only done on that period of time. But we know, and I know from patients I've seen over years, that this can last an awful lot longer. So I think, as I had the pleasure of being with Gareth in Rotterdam a couple of weeks ago at the European Resuscitation Council, and there were a lot of survivors and co-survivors there. And certainly when I spoke to them, fatigue was just enormous, and this had been years ago. So I think that's, in a nutshell, it is normal. I think it's really important as well to recognise that every single person who's had a sudden cardiac arrest is an individual. Everyone's circumstances are different as well. Their downtime, how it happened, who it happened with, all of these kind of things. And I think that can have a huge effect on a myriad of things as well. So in a nutshell, yes, it is very, very typical.
Okay, can I just ask something in there, Claudine? When we say high levels of fatigue, what do we mean by that? What does a high level of fatigue look like typically look like for a sudden cardiac arrest survivor? I know my experience, but I think it will help if we hear from you with that.
So I think it's really important to differentiate between being tired and fatigue.
Yeah.
And for me, that is something I've really had to, well, I've learned that as an occupational therapist, because it's not just with my cardiac arrest survivors, it's with everyone. But being tired is very different for fatigue. And one of my patients who I have seen over quite a long time has said when you're tired, you just think, oh, I need to go to bed. I didn't get the right sleep last night. But fatigue, he said, was like wading through treacle. Every single daily activity that we all take for granted, washing and dressing, cooking, even talking to a friend on the phone, paying your bills, is fatigue. And I think that's really important to differentiate. And so high levels of fatigue can just be impacting on your daily active living tasks, day-to-day normal stuff. And I'm not even talking about returning to work, but that's a whole nother, because, you know, for some people that do that. So, and then I think when you have high levels of fatigue, it affects your quality of life.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I would totally agree. The wading through treacle thing, that resonates definitely with me. I wonder if I wonder how you actually recognize fatigue, because I wasn't even aware that I was particularly fatigued before maybe sort of 3 or 4 months down the line. I think I was kind of in denial. I was trying to prove to myself that I was absolutely fine. And, you know, I went out walking. I went back to work within a week of my cardiac arrest, and that was a mistake. But I wonder, are there ways to recognize that you are suffering from fatigue rather than, as you say, just a little bit tired?
So, like I said, it's even things like all the things we take for granted: making a cup of tea, getting washed and dressed in the morning, going shopping. All of those things that we just take for granted actually take effort, and that's fatigue. And then after you do that task, whatever it may be, you just feel that I've just got to sit down. I've got to have a break. You physically cannot go on. And I think one of the things we'll get to later when we talk about, you know, different things, is that I think a lot of us, or sorry, not us, I'm speaking, but for the patients that I see, not us, I'm so sorry, is that people try and push through. And we call it the superhero complex, because we're so used to just saying, I'll just do that. I'll just do that. And what's really, really important is to recognize when your body is saying to you, I can't do this. But we all keep pushing ourselves. So does that make sense? Or
that definitely does. And I think it's this idea that in the very early days, you're trying to get back, even though everyone tells you you've got to find your new normal. What at the very beginning, as I remember it, I don't know about you, Gareth, but it's that feeling that you just want to get back to normal. Like Gareth went straight back to work. In retrospect, it's bonkers, but you are so desperate to get back to, like, what you just can't believe that this has happened. And I so recognize what you say, that feeling of doing anything, like even having a shower and you want to sit down afterwards and have a rest. It's like you're like, what is going on? I cannot believe it. I cannot believe this is happening to me. So yeah, no, that's quite helpful to know that.
I think as well, it would have been helpful. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, it also is just physically, it's cognitively as well. It's those things like maybe just reading the paper, maybe just reading your bill that has come through, trying to organize your diary. That causes fatigue as well. It doesn't necessarily have to mean hanging your washing out or something physical. It is just, it's just this malaise that comes over you, this fatigue. So it's physically and cognitively.
Yeah.
I think as well, it would have been useful to have been told that this was going to happen. I think that was the biggest surprise to me. Was I was discharged. I had a heart attack that led to a cardiac arrest, and the treatment for the heart attack was fantastic, and it was fixed very quickly, etc., etc. But nobody told me that nobody told me I had a brain injury. Nobody told me that I was going to be tired. Nobody told me that my legs were going to feel like lead every time I tried to stand up. And even that little bit of warning, and I might have done things differently. I might have, paced myself a bit more rather than, get up 3 days later and decide, I'm bored, I'm going to go to work.
Absolutely.
I think just information is a good starting point.
Yeah.
I think when I hear from you, Claudine, that you actually go into the wards and see people right at the beginning, that is phenomenal. That is what we want, isn't it? We want, so you will be telling them, you will be forewarning them that this is coming. And going forward, that's something that I feel that we need to make more clear to people, because I didn't know that. I didn't realize that.
So we have a pathway at the Northcote Norwich that has taken me a very long time to get in place. But now every single patient that out of hospital cardiac arrest patient, regardless of whether they may have a hypoxia, referred to occupational therapy. We go through a whole host of cognitive assessments, psychological assessments. When I say psychological, I'm obviously not a clinical psychologist, but we do mood screens, and we take them and we do functional assessments. So something as basic as making a cup of tea, and I take them out and do road safety as well, because making a cup of tea, you've been in bed. Some of our patients have been in ITU, they have suffered delirium. They have things called PICS, which is post-intensive care syndrome as well, which just takes it out of them. And they can have extended hospital stays. And as we know that when you're lying in a hospital bed, you lose muscle mass really, really quickly. So something as basic as making a cup of tea is not just looking at, can they make a cup of tea? I'm looking at, can they process? Have they got stamina? What are their fatigue levels? Have they got any safety awareness? All of these kind of things. And it gives patients confidence as well. So I'm very lucky that myself and my team, it's really been valued now in our hospital, where everyone, we see them all, unless site practitioners get in and send them home before us, and that does happen, but we get in there and we do a whole host of assessments. And I have to say, and as you know, I'm big fans of sudden cardiac arrest, I give every single patient a printout of your fatigue management from your website. And I always go on and introduce myself as well and tell them that fatigue will be the biggest thing that they need to pace. So I think you're absolutely right, Joanna, that simple information going on and just I think the key here is managing expectations. We have to manage expectations, because as you pointed out, Gareth, you just went straight back to work, because lots of patients as well lose their identity. They want to prove that they can just get back to normal. Yeah. They've got the euphoria of maybe being, I'm here, I'm alive, I've done this, I'm just going to get back to normal. But no one has told them what those side effects are going to be. And I think I mentioned to you as well, we take them out and do road safety. Basic, we've got a big roundabout, but I want to know that they've got that processing to actually see that they can do these things. And I'm very lucky because our hospital has really taken that on board. But yeah, managing expectations, simple communication and information right at the point of hospital discharge, not discharge, admission. Yeah, when it's appropriate.
Fantastic.
I think if I have another cardiac arrest, I want to have it at your centre.
Yeah,
I certainly didn't get any of that.
We said before, didn't we? We wanted to be in Essex next time, but now I think we'll go for North. Was it Norfolk?
Yeah, come to Norfolk.
Yeah. It was quite striking. Claudine mentioned that I met her a couple of weeks ago at the ERC conference in Rotterdam. And I decided from that, because I've actually had 2 cardiac arrests in 2 different countries. I had one in the UK and one in Turkey. If I had one in another country, I'm going to go to Sweden, because they are streets ahead.
They're on it, are they?
There we are. They're properly on it. Okay, let's move on to question 2. Where are we? 20 past. Yeah, perfect timing. So the second question that we're going to look at tonight, they're all interrelated. But the second question that we're looking at this evening is, I'm years down the line, but still struggling with fatigue compared to my friends. And that's a very interesting point. We tend to have friends of a similar age group. And so we have a comparator. So comparing like an individual's fatigue with their cohort of friends is quite an interesting point. So yeah, I'm years down the line, still struggling with fatigue compared to my friends. What can I do? And that's the salient one here. So Claudine, I'm going to come back to you for that first.
This was my most difficult question, actually, because it's really important, and it's you know, I think it goes back that you're years down the line, and yeah, you just want to get back to that normality, or that what you did. And friends and social activities are a huge part of everyone's life. And like we said, you know, fatigue, if you were used to, I don't know, having dinner parties and staying up late, you might not be able to do that. Or if you went on 10-mile walks with your friends because you loved, you know, country walks, you may not be able to do that. And so I thought really carefully about this one. And I just thought, again, it comes down to open, honest communication, and just saying to your friends as well, look, I want to see you and I want to be part of what we're doing, but can we adapt the activities that we maybe do? So, you know, we used to do a 5-mile walk on a Friday. I just can't do that. Could we go to the park? Could we maybe just walk around the block and then have a cup of coffee? Could we do something a bit different? Okay, I love having dinner with you usually, but do you think we could maybe make it at lunchtime, because I've got more energy at lunch? And I think it's just having that, that communication of just expressing. But I also think it's really important that people don't want, they can feel like they're a failure because they're having to say those things. And I think that's really important. But it's just making really, and it could be slight little adaptations to things, just saying that I can't do that late night, but let's do something in the day. And I would suggest that you set the tone, you make the suggestions. What are you comfortable with? And it's a really difficult question, because our friendship groups are so important to us, but we can make slight adaptations to our activities, I think.
Gosh, that is incredible, because that is what I've done, even though it's 11 years down the road. What you've just described, and I've never heard anyone say that before, that's what I do. And if I live in Bath, if I go to see certain girlfriends in different places, I'll say, and then they know now, and they will say, there's a bedroom ready, so I'll have lunch. And then I'll say, do you mind if I just go? I can sleep anywhere. I can sleep standing up. And so I'll just say, do you mind if I just go and lie? And they'll say, yeah, the bedroom's ready. Go and have a lie down. And it's all those kinds of things. I think you're so right about sharing it. Communication is the thing. And honestly, if a friend makes an issue out of it, they're not really a friend, are they? So absolutely. Your real friends will do this. I think that open honesty is true. And at what line, though, Claudine, do you push through to do it, or do you just say, I'm not going to push through to it. I'm going to listen to my body, and I'm going to do what works for me? Or should we be pushing? Because sometimes I just don't know.
Okay. I think that kind of links into our next question, doesn't it? I'm not sure. I mean, it might be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I can probably link it a little bit with that one then, because what I can start to do now is talk to you about maybe some coping strategies or things like that of how we do it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. As someone who is, generally speaking, is allergic to exercise, it really affect me, the 10-mile walks and stuff like that. But one thing that I would like to bring up, and it's interesting, I'm not going to mention the gentleman's name because that's not very fair, but Joanna and I do know somebody who wants to run the London Marathon for us next year. Lovely chap. I can call him an older gentleman because I'm an older gentleman myself. And he's run marathons and things in the past. he wants to run a marathon again for us. He is a cardiac arrest survivor, but he's prepared to run to a pace. He's got an ICD, he's got his watch that tells him what his heart rate is. He's quite happy to watch that and say, okay, I'm not getting to my heart rate's not getting too high. I'm still in my comfort zone. So that he's adapting what he loves. He's adapting how he does it rather than saying, I can't do it anymore. He's adapting how he does it. And I find that utterly inspirational.
Yeah, same.
That is a fantastic example of pacing, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, because you shouldn't have to give up what you love. It's what's really important to you, but it is going to be adapting. I've recently had a patient who had his cardiac arrest on a park run. He loved his park runs, and he has quite quickly gone back. But as we know as well, I think one of the things we'd say, I know it's not available for everyone, but if you do get offered cardiac rehab, take it. And if you didn't get it at the time, I would see if there's anything out there like phase 4s. Are there any gyms that have someone who understands, so for instance, the British Association of Cardiac Prevention and Rehabilitation, have they got that BCPAR qualification where they can help you work out your heart rate and adapt to those kind of things? But he has gone back to running, but he's had to do it at a slower pace. Yeah. And we don't, my job as an occupational therapist is all about keeping patients independent, functionally independent. I want people to go back to their day-to-day living tasks, but it's all about how we can adapt that. And I think that's fantastic. So whereas he may have run that marathon, I don't know, because I'm a bit like you, Gareth. I'm adverse to any kind of thing like that. But, whereas say he would have run it, I don't know, 4 hours, I don't know, he may have to run it in 6 now. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And I think the other thing with sudden cardiac arrest survivors, I'd like to call them the walking wounded, because everyone goes, but they look great. Oh, they do it. They but they're not knowing the full thing of what's going on inside. So yeah, that's a fantastic example.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Because I think that all of that leads really, really well into question 3, which is probably the crux of why we've got Claudine here this evening. And I'll try and bring it up. There we go. So what strategies, we've just talked about one, but what strategies or home adaptations could you suggest that would make daily tasks less exhausting? And it's interesting here that this particular person, I know who asked this question. Again, I haven't put it on the screen. I think it's really interesting that this person has said exhausting and not tiring. And I think he's absolutely right. So, Claudine, again, I do apologise. I keep coming to you, but that's why you're here. So I'm going to come to you again first. I'm trying to give you time to have a swig of your whiskey and coffee.
Irish coffee, yeah. Okay. So I'm sure everyone listening today has heard of the word pacing. And it really is, I cannot tell you enough how important it is to pace. But what I will say to a patient to make daily tasks less exhausting, I call it my 3 Ps. Prioritize what's important for you to do that day. Plan it. Do you have more energy in the morning or the afternoon? Or is it the same? Just look at that and then pace it. Get that task and think about what I can do to break that down. So I was thinking about this today. So let's take washing your car. Now, actually, that is a really exertive task. It's a big one. Lots of patients, I just want to wash my car and all the rest of it. So when they've said, I just can't do it. Another thing I'll get to do with patients, and then I see them, this is when I follow them up. I get them to do an activity planner. Now, you can do this yourself. You can just keep a little notebook or a diary, and you can just note down what you did all day, what tasks you did, and kind of fine, a bit tired, absolutely exhausted, had to stop. So to keep an activity planner, because lots of people may have heard of boom and bust. That's what we call it. So what they'll do is they just keep, I think, Joanna, you asked this question, at which point do you stop? And it's a lot of people just keep going. They don't listen to their bodies. Listen to this amazing piece of kit we've been given. It tells us, it does. But we have this tendency to just go, I'll just, this is not getting the better of me. I'm going to do this. And then what happens when you push through that barrier of just, imagine a set of dominoes. I'm a very visual learner, so there'll be lots of analogies tonight. But you've got a set of dominoes up. And when you're absolutely exhausted, that first domino goes down when you go at the end of the day or the end of the task, whatever time it is. But it isn't just the first domino that goes down. It's the next one and the next one and the next one. And what people don't realize is it isn't just you're exhausted on that day. When you boom or bust, you're exhausted for the next day, and the next day, and you never, ever catch up. So listen to your body. It's your best friend. It is telling you if you are tired. So for instance, we've got Bill. Bill likes to wash his car. That's what he likes to do. That's his pride and joy, and he does it. But Bill did it in the afternoon, and he's doing it. He's just keep going, and he keeps going, and he keeps going. And that night, he's exhausted. And it wipes out the Sunday and the Monday, and he just never catches up. Bill starts to keep an activity diary, and he realizes that actually it takes him a little while to get going in the mornings, but about mid-morning, I've got quite a bit of energy. So what I would say to Bill is, right, plan your activity then, but instead of doing the whole car, Bill, I want you to maybe wash it, rinse it, go and have a cup of tea. Go and sit down for a good 15 or 20 minutes. And I know it's frustrating because a lot of patients say, well, it's all very well for you to say, but I want to finish it and do it, mowing the lawn and all of this kind of thing. But sometimes with just that little break in a task, it just gives your body enough time to recuperate. Not always. And if it doesn't, if you are still absolutely exhausted, then you don't do it because you're just going to keep putting yourself out. So you need to think about when you have your most energy, get your task, break it down, chunk it into manageable sizes, have regular breaks, and then start to build up from there. Because when you just try and do it all in one go and you keep pushing your way through, you're just not going to get anywhere. So I was trying to look today for some examples, and I think I mentioned this to you guys when we had a chat. And actually, I'm going to compare it when we were actually in Rotterdam, Gareth. The one day, my phone ran out of charge it was down to 25% at 12 o'clock. And I knew that I had another 5 hours of lectures to go to or taking pictures and wanting to do it. And so at 12 o'clock, I thought, my phone, that charge isn't going to last until 5 o'clock. I am going to have to recharge my phone. And I don't care where I am or whose adapter or whose plug or where I am, I'm going to charge it up. And I charged it up for an hour, and I was able to then carry on for the rest of the day. And think of your body as a battery. Think of it as green, amber, or the other way. Yeah, I'm the red, amber, green. It's been a long day. But no, look at those things when you need to charge yourself up. Does that make sense?
Entirely. It's that central message seems to be listen to your body, isn't it?
Yeah.
What
And
about
another,
what about the
no,
other
go
thing,
ahead.
which is the feeling that I'm very happy to do that, but I know lots of people worry that they want to give the impression that they are doing better, that they are okay. How do they reconcile that? How do they any suggestions on that? Because some people don't just want to, like as I do, just go off and have a nap in someone else's house, because I know that will get me through the rest of the day. But what if you don't want to do that? Is there any other thing that you can do? Is there? Not really.
No.
No, I mean there is. I think it goes back to managing those expectations again, and I think it's goal setting. And I always use, I think anyone who's worked in a public institution or a big company will know that I use SMART goals. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And that goal, I always say, you need to think of yourself as like a bricklayer. You need to get the foundations right first. You can't go for big goals. We just need to go for small goals, baby steps. And I know that's frustrating. And I know it's really easy for me to sit here and say that. But it's about managing. So just give yourself smaller goals and then work up gradually and make them smart. If you want to increase your exercise tolerance, I use this in my OT talk actually at cardiac rehab. You've got someone who wants to increase their exercise tolerance. You're obviously not going to say, I mean, your gentleman you used is now going to run a marathon, but I'm presuming that's been quite a few or a little time. He's not just come straight out of something.
No.
Start with a small goal. Find a walking group, for instance. Is it, be specific. Okay, I'm going to join a walking group. Is it measurable? Yes. It's a 6-week course. Is it attainable? Yeah, actually, it's just around the corner from where I live. Is it realistic? Yeah, it's free. It's actually free and timely. It starts on Monday. And I'm not suggesting everyone sits down and does it, but just think about your goal and then you need to build them up. And another analogy I use with my is hare and tortoise. The hare shot out of the trap and the tortoise slowly won the race. But it's frustrating. And I think we need to have empathy and understand that as well.
And empathy and understanding to ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need to be, I mean, that's something as well we're talking about. I think mindfulness, I think taking breaks, some nice deep relaxed breathing. I say to a lot of patients, a really simple one to do is just that breathing in through your nose and holding, and then that long breath out. Maybe just sitting with a cup of tea, watching the birds in the garden, just listening to some lovely music. You have to be kind to yourself. You've been through so much. And I think we expect so much, or you expect so much, well, humans expect so much themselves that we've got to take into account of what has happened. And yeah, you've got to be kind.
Can I just bring in a question or a comment that's been given? I think this is a really good point that Livia makes. She said, so lately I started to think I am becoming depressed because all day I just don't feel like doing anything or even being motivated.
Yeah.
But listening to you explain this, I think I am fatigued to the max. And Livia, what's your response to that, Claudine? I get this completely, Livia.
Hi, Lydia.
That you're depressed rather than understanding that it is actually a result of what's happened.
It's totally that. I think it's going back to that understanding and other people understanding, but you being understanding of yourself as well. And I know I keep going on, but managing those expectations. And it is really easy to get low in mood, to have high anxiety with this. You need to be kind to yourself. And maybe the activities that you can't do, just think about what can I do that isn't so exhausting? So is it sitting doing some colouring? I'm just using that. Is it doing a crossword? Well, for some people, cognitively, that might be too much. Is it listening to some lovely music? Is it, you know, just something that you enjoy? I think, well, fatigue and mood come hand in hand. Yeah. I was thinking earlier about, I mean, relaxation and mindfulness is so important as well. You know, visualization, all of those kind of things. But yeah, a really good comment.
Yeah, it is a really good comment. Can I just ask something that you mentioned earlier, Claudine? You talked about mood. One of the things you did was, sorry, Gareth, I know you had your finger up, so we will come back. But it's just because I can't remember.
Followed the rules. I actually put my finger up.
Sorry. You did the rules. You did. No, but you mentioned, Claudine, about a mood assessor that you did. I was really curious about that because I've never heard of that before, and I think that might be quite a helpful thing to know about.
So we, what you mean, the assessments that we do before they go home? Presently, we use something called the PHQ-9, which is a patient health questionnaire, and a GAD-7, a general anxiety disorder 7. Now, I actually don't think I'm actually in the process of doing something called a HADS, which is a hospital assessment disorder. But what it basically is a series of questions. How are you feeling? How is your anxiety? We just ask people how they are feeling today. I haven't got one to hand. But
is it worth us, you know, perhaps Olivia or other people in that position, is it worth perhaps recording this so that when you go to the GP or to anyone, you've actually got a record of how of the fact that your mood does change and why it you know, that it's going up and down, because we're not like that all the time necessarily, but that it's more than you would expect.
I would say keep a mood diary, or, you know, don't have a mood diary, just keep a little diary of, I felt really low today, I felt, you know, better. Yeah, and maybe keep it for a couple of weeks and go and speak to your GP or ask, can I be referred to wellbeing? A lot of across the country, they have IAPS, which is integrated psychology, talking therapies. Can I speak to someone? You know, I have been through this. And yeah, record it. And I think that's really important for lots of things. Your activity, like I said, do an activity planner, keep a mood diary, and don't be afraid to go to your GP and actually say, I need to talk to someone about this. You know, we refer on to wellbeing all the time. That's, you know, we don't have a clinical psychologist sadly anymore. But that's what, you know, go and see your GP.
Brilliant. Sorry, Gareth, over to you.
Is it my turn?
Oh, sorry.
Claudine, I noticed that you talked about Bill, who likes to watch it. Bill needs a new hobby, as far as I'm concerned. I've got no idea why anybody would find that relaxing in any way, shape, or form. But I wanted to go back to Livia's point, because I happen to know Livia. I know her quite well. She's a lovely, lovely lady. And I know that she runs her own business. So sitting at home on her sofa for half an hour and having a cup of tea and then thinking, well, I might go out there and do like 5 minutes work, and that's not an option for her. You know, she has to get up in the morning and go to work and run her business. So what can people in that situation do? I know you're probably going to say pacing, but you know, sometimes that's not an option. Is there anything specifically that people who have to get up and go to work, you know, we don't get money coming in unless we get up and go to work?
That's a really good point.
Return to work is it's one of the hardest things I have to do and or talk about for patients, because yeah, if you work for a big company and they have an occupational health, or you can get sick pay. And then I have patients who are self-employed, and having been self-employed before I became an occupational therapist, I know that the buck ends with you, and that if you don't do that, then your bills won't get paid. So I really can empathize with that. I think it goes back to things like, though, as well, see if there's any help that you can get, you know, financially or different bits with go and speak to Citizens Advice Bureau just to see if there's anything, because actually fatigue, this isn't you're just tired. This is a complete consequence of what you've gone through. But self-employed people, it's really difficult, really, really difficult. But it is going to come back down to pacing again. You know, so I think one of the questions was about home adaptations as well, and things like that.
Yeah.
So, for instance, have you got a setup with work where is there anywhere that you can just make it very accessible, that you're not having to, like a little office space? Can you schedule meetings at a time when you know that in the mornings that you've got more energy, or if it's the afternoon, because everyone's individual again, try and make it work for you. Schedule the meetings. And I know that's not always possible as well, but try and just adapt it as to when you can. If you're working from home, make sure, I think, because that's really difficult as well when people work from home, they just tend to keep working. Make sure you have boundaries. Make sure you get a good lunch hour. Make sure you go outside and maybe have that cup of tea or coffee and have that time. And I mean, it's really difficult. Self-employed people are really difficult. It's really difficult. I know that's not answering your question in a, but
it is. It is the hardest thing that, I'm self-employed as well, and you have to work. You just have to do it. Yes, okay, you do it maybe do it slightly differently, but I can't sit on my sofa and do nothing for an hour and then go and wash the car. I would never go and wash the car anyway. But
me neither.
Let's move on. It's coming up to 10 to 8. So
Can I just point in that lovely Livia? She is such a lovely lady. We both know her. She's fantastic.
I think I've met Livia as well. I'm not sure whether she says yes. I don't know if I met her back in May. I may have not, but I think I did.
You may well have done. And she says, thank you, really great advice. What a lovely lady she is.
I was going to just say quickly for that, though, as well, little things like for energy, for people, things like maybe batch cooking. I know that sounds really, but things like that. Maybe make a big casserole or all the rest of it where you're standing. Get a nice high stool, sit and peel your veg at the table. Really practical things which sound, but they can just be so energy conserving. Really simple. Sit and if you're tired of standing, sit at the table. Do your vegetables. Do a big batch cook. Freeze some. So on those days when you're absolutely shattered, you can go to the freezer and just know that you haven't got to feed your family or for yourself. Changing beds, do it in bits. Just take the pillowcases off. Come back a bit later. It's really difficult though, because psychologically you want to do it all, but it's just doing things differently. And I think if you can just think, I'm just going to do it a bit differently, then that can really help. And another thing is called the spoon theory, where they have spoons for the day. You have 12 spoonfuls of sugar, and you think, how much energy does that task take me? Actually, washing and dressing is huge. I'm shattered. I've got 12, but that takes 4. So I'm going to have to just then divide the rest of those spoons through the day for different things. So the activity planner, your mood planner, try and do things for energy conservation, adapting things to you, and your 3 Ps: prioritize, plan, and pace.
Brilliant.
That's fantastic advice. Thanks, Claudine. I'm going to move on to the last question that we have this evening. And we probably covered a lot of it already, but I would like to bring it up because it's quite interesting. So this question, I'm a co-survivor and hypervigilance is exhausting me. What can I do? And we absolutely must not forget that for every survivor, there's a co-survivor, more or less. For every survivor, there's a co-survivor, there's a family, there's people looking after them. And I think, Claudine, when we were in Rotterdam, we heard from a co-survivor on, I think it was the Saturday morning, who talked about this. This isn't who the question came from, but she talked about it. That certainly in the early days, basically didn't sleep. And I know we're going to talk about sleep in a different episode, but she basically didn't sleep because she was just continually checking on her husband, and got to the point where she was so tired that she felt useless. So at the end of that question is, what can I do? Well, I've got no idea, so I'm going to come back to you about
that. So important. Co-survivors, I mean, we heard some, I mean, it really humbled me what they go through. It's equally as important, you know. And the hypervigilance is totally real. The sleeping thing is, I had a patient recently, a lady and her husband. He now doesn't sleep. He watches her. He literally watches her at night. And so we talked things through, and I'm still seeing this patient and her husband. Again, communication, and he didn't want to leave her. And what we often struggle with is you've got a patient who wants some autonomy and their independence back and their identity, and you have their co-survivor who loves them and just wants to wrap them up in cotton wool, and they never want to leave them. So it's like a scale, this balance. So he wouldn't even leave her alone in the day. And so what we started with is like, okay, could you maybe just go into the kitchen for 10 minutes and leave her in the sitting room? She's right there. If you need to leave the door open, we get it. But we're going to start with 10, and we're going to just build it up really gradually. And we did this over time of like in many months actually with this patient. And it got where eventually her sister would then come round, so he knew that he could leave her, and he went out and did 9 holes of golf. You know, like he did that. He would sit in bed because he would watch in bed, and they would do relaxation together, their deep breaths, and then she would tend to fall off to sleep. And then he knew she was asleep. And even though I encouraged him, you might not be sleeping, just close your eyes and rest. Just rest. And over time, he was so relaxed, well, not so relaxed, but more relaxed, that he could kind of just get some sleep. So it's time, and it's those building blocks again. But co-survivors and hypervigilance is it really humbles me, and they are often the ones that have seen it all, because the patients don't remember the actual event. And they have to process. And when we did have our follow-up clinic, I would always see relatives as well, and we would take relatives out separately to talk to them, because their story was just equally as important. I would encourage co-survivors as well to seek maybe some counselling or talking therapies. Make sure the same kind of thing, the pacing though, make sure you make some time for you, you know, as well. If it's things like where you're at home, just listen to your lovely music. You can still be there with them and doing it. But actually, I hate to keep going back to Rotterdam, but when I heard one of the co-survivors, one of their talks was saying they suddenly dropped, their husband dropped a pan, and it was like the same noise that they had heard when they had that, and it just triggered everything off. So hypervigilance is exhausting, and you need to almost do the same as the survivor. They need to pace and look after yourself, and I just can't stress, you need to do lovely things, and they don't have to cost a lot of money. Go out and sit in the garden when the sun shines. Not a good time of year for me to be saying this, but maybe with your duvet on and some gloves and a balaclava or something. But it's the small little things, but they must take care of themselves.
Great advice. The other thing I would add is that is that it's also accepting that this is what it is. For us as the survivor, it's accepting that the brain injury may well last for the rest of your life, the consequences of it. And also for the co-survivor, accepting that you will always be worried about your your survivor. You always will. Alistair, my husband, checks me almost every morning. I'm asleep when he leaves in the morning, and sometimes I pretend to be asleep. I'm not really asleep, and he comes over and I can put his hand just to make sure. And I think it's rather sweet. I'm sorry, I hope you can't hear it. I think it's sweet. It's also just accepting this. That is what you will feel. You can put it into a place over time, a place of, yes, if I check that she's okay, then I can go off to do my day's work, and that's fine. And so it's like, I think coming back to what you've said about these strategies are brilliant, and they definitely are, and about being kind to yourself. Something incredible happened to us, and there are consequences. So don't try and get back to whatever you were before. You have to live with it.
And I think out of something we talk a lot about, of something very negative, a very negative thing, there can be positives as well. It can bring people together. Your communication can open, your perspectives change. All the things that once were maybe important aren't so much. Actually, let's do this differently. How can we do that? And we talk about all of these kind of things, but fatigue, it might be something that you have forever. I think it is managing those expectations, that it's never maybe going to come back fully as it was, but with adaptations, with understanding, with communication, with choosing different things maybe that you've not done before, but that expel so much energy, it can be managed. It really can be managed. And ask for help, and if it's things like around the house, where it's basically, if you're absolutely shattered standing in the shower, for instance, ask for an OT assessment at home, see what adaptations they can put in for you, a shower chair. All these basic things, we think are basic, are huge. Organize your tea and coffee. We know that when you raise your arms, you maybe get a bit more short of breath, particularly if you're, your heart has been damaged by those things. So ergonomically, look at how you can make things less strenuous for yourself. So there are some really fundamental things that you can put into place.
I think just going back to the co-survivor thing, one thing that I'd like to kind of reassure people is that it does get better. I know people don't like hearing like time is a great healer, but unfortunately that is true. The vigilance will never stop, but the hypervigilance will. Yeah. As Joanna just said, in fact, Sue does exactly the same thing with me. 12 years down the line, the first thing she does every morning is make sure I'm still alive. But she's at least stopped waking me up at night to see if I'm still awake, to see if I'm still alive. One of the reasons I was so tired for 6 months is because
she kept waking you up.
I was still alive.
Yes.
So that the hypervigilance will go, but the vigilance will normal vigilance, if you like, will stay there. And one thing that I always try to explain to people, because I do think it's important that co-survivors look after themselves. I always liken it to the announcement on the plane when they did the safety briefing on the plane. There's a reason why they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on others. Co-survivors are so focused on looking after the survivor, they can't forget themselves, because you can't look after somebody else if you're not looking after yourself.
Yeah. But
the hypervigilance will go.
And can I just bring in a lovely comment here from I think it's Jan Riley. Is that about that right? So Jan says, Claudine, what wonderful nuggets of insight and good advice and simple ideas. Want my close friends to hear this episode. Thank you. And I echo that. It's absolutely, 100%. I've really found this so helpful.
I mean, to be honest, there are lots more things I could talk about for a lot longer, and it's a huge subject, and it's so pivotal in our lives and has such an effect on our day-to-day lives. But it can be managed, and you know, I just feel really passionately about that people should have access to these kind of things because they're really simple. They're really simple, but it's just knowing where to go and doing things. But thank you. That's very kind.
Claudine, I know that we're going to do another episode.
You might not want me back.
We definitely do. I know we're going to do another episode focusing on sleep.
Yeah.
But I guess the two things are interrelated to a certain extent. But maybe this is a better question for then. But as an ex-pilot, one of the things that I was always told was that you need to work within, or you don't work in the window of circadian low. Does that affect? You talked about pacing, but does that also affect fatigue?
So, gosh, you might have to reword that question for me, Gareth. Circadian low.
Well, you know what circadian rhythm is, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I purposely haven't talked about sleep, but actually, sleep is a huge thing with fatigue, obviously. And for someone who doesn't sleep very well herself, I understand the impact that can have on the day to day. You said obviously we have a circadian rhythm. I'm going to go into this. I think I'm doing one in about 3 weeks' time about sleep. So I'm going to talk about that. But one of the things I've learned, I did a sleep course in London about 3 years ago, and everyone talks about hours of sleep. You need to get this amount of hours or that amount of hours. What I never realized is that we actually have sleep cycles.
Yeah.
And I'll go into it in more detail then, but right. It's the sleep cycles rather. Don't get too fixated on I didn't get 8 hours. I didn't get 8 hours. Try and think about even if you're resting in bed and you've got that and you can listen to, I don't know, a podcast or some nice music or something, just trying to rest, because I do think sometimes that we get obsessed about the amount of hours that we've got, and it doesn't help now with Apple Watches and Aura rings, and everyone gets so. Really go with how you're feeling, but I'll go into that in more detail. But sleep obviously does have a huge impact on fatigue, obviously. But yeah. God, you're going to have to write that question down for me, Gareth. That was a bit technical for me tonight.
my job is to throw a curveball in.
I was going to say, just a quick one here from Henry Gregor, and he said, "Thanks all, really great session." He said, "Hospital put me on melatonin, really helped sleep." But we'll talk about sleep next time. Yeah, I think is it the 18th or 16th, Gareth?
To be honest, I have no idea.
I think it's the 16th. I think
it is. Yeah,
December. So everyone who's listening, that's a definite one to put in your diary.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And with that, we've done the hour. In fact, we've overrun the hour, so we are going to wrap things up for this evening. Joanna, thank you for being here with me as always, and Claudine, thank you so much for this evening. Thank you for finding the time. We can't do this without passionate people like you giving up their time to come and help us and come and support us, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. So
you're more than welcome. So guys, if you enjoyed what we discussed this evening, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, do like the video, do share it, all that kind of thing. It really does make a difference. It gets us up the YouTube algorithm ladder. The more subscribers we have, the more seriously they take us, and the easier it is for people to actually find us. And that's ultimately what this is all about. The more people that can find us, the more people that we can help. And that's why we do what we do. We're here trying to help people. So it's a simple thing. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with your friends, all that kind of thing. And on the outro video, there will be, as always, there will be 2 QR codes. One is a link to donate to SCA UK. One is a link to our shop. So you could buy some merchandise from the shop, which is another way of supporting SCA UK. I know YouTube's free, I know Facebook's free, all these things are free to participate in, but they do cost us money to actually produce them, and we are reliant upon your donations. So we understand not everybody can. We know we're coming up to Christmas, but if anybody can spare £5 or £10, that helps us tremendously. So with that, I am going to wrap it up for this evening. From myself, from Joanna, from Claudine, thank you very, very much for being here, and we'll see you on the next one. Good night.
Everyone.